everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Live. Today, I am your host, Carlo Libertini, and I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about an application that is so near and dear to my heart, and that is Melodyne. Melodyne version 5 here this afternoon. So if you're able to join me live, thank you so much for your time. We at Celemony and Music Marketing and myself, thank you so much. If you're going to be joining us later on, just leave your creative comments below, but we've got the chat room live and it is happening now. So thanks for hanging with me today. All right, now Melodyne is really a unique program, I should say. And I thought that perhaps we could focus on the fundamentals of making Melodyne work for you, because oftentimes I'll come across a lot of people who are struggling with getting their head around Melodyne. So I'm going to show you some basic tips and techniques to check or to get in line first before you start working, making your projects a lot more easier and more efficient. All right, so before we do that, let's do some please and thank yous. Of course, if you have Melodyne, great. If you don't, then download a demo today. There's plenty of descriptions. In the description, there's plenty of links for you to follow to check out. All right, so definitely do that. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Become part of our music marketing family today and get access to over 1,000 pro audio training videos here on YouTube for you. All right, so do that. And we thank you. Now, back to Melodyne. Now, there are several versions of Melodyne, of course, because depending on your needs, there's obviously Melodyne Studio, Editor, and then there's obviously going to be the more introductory ones that are going to be featured in some programs that are included with like Studio One. And I feel that each one offers a little bit something unique. So that's important to keep in mind because I don't know what version you're going to be using, but we're going to be using Melodyne Studio here today. All right, so before we get started, why don't we test our audio? Now, what we're looking at here is the standalone version. Now, we are going to be running it in a DAW, and there is some good news coming to Pro Tools users this week that ARA integration will now be available in Pro Tools soon. So that's really, really cool. Thank you everyone at Avid for that. We really love you too. And Audio Random Access is obviously a proprietary plugin format that the folks at Presonus and Celemony created to take Melodyne and build it into DAWs. So you can use it as an insert or as part of the application, which really, really, truly does streamline your work. And we're going to get to some of that too. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them below. Now, back to what I was saying about making Melodyne work for you. Often there's some small little details or little tips and tricks you can do in preparation before you begin editing. And why don't we start with this one? Because a lot of people want to jump right in with pitch editing with Melodyne, and that's great. But oftentimes you have to prepare the tempo or the timing, because when you import audio in, you want to make sure that your grid is going to line up with the waveforms. And I kept it really simple for this. I just brought in a bass guitar. Let's take a listen to this so we can test our audio. Now you can hear that I have a click playing. If you want to activate that up here in the menu bar in the center right, you can toggle it on and off like this. And if you select in there and drag, you can adjust the volume of the click. Now, why is this important? Because to the right of it, you see we've got the squiggly line here. It's saying it's averaging. When you don't have a solid equals line, when it's solid and equal, it means it's a constant tempo. What Melodyne is doing, because it's so powerful, is it's detecting a more free feel. It's saying it's around 110.47 right here. Okay. So what Melodyne can do is actually see how the tempo is changing. It's reading the tempo in real time. It's tempo mapping it. And yes, in case you were wondering, you can export up here. You can export that as a tempo map. So what a tempo map is, it's going to be a unique kind of metronome information that's going to not be consistent, but actually play a metronome back to the measured performance tempo of a song. Really cool, right? All right, but what if you want to start working with some drums or some drum loops? Here, I want to show you something. When I drag the audio file in, you can see that the first beat right here didn't line up with beat 1, bar 1 here on the ninth measure. Take a listen. You hear that? So again, this is all part of making Melodyne work for you. If you weren't aware of this, you may start struggling later on in your editing. Well, there's several ways to do this. And I want to pull focus to the next to the tempo here. You got both edit tempo mode and assign tempo mode. These are ways to help you tell Melodyne how to focus and accurately read or make changes to certain tempo. Here you can see that the tempo line is relatively inconsistent. It's a free feel performance. All right. Now you could right click and you can actually choose make this a constant tempo. And what did Melodyne do? It analyzed the audio that quickly and it timed it to a quantized beat. So now if you look up here, it says equals 109.90 BPM. So if you wanted to take a free feel performance and lock it to a grid, that is exactly how you do it. Just come in here, right click, choose make constant tempo, and then from within here, you can drag or write in any information value you want, and Melodyne will time stretch it for you. You could double click and also type in the value too. And then you can undo it as many times as you want. So have fun with it. There's no reason not to be creative there. Now, if you wanted to move this to beat 1, bar 1, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could move the measure, but I actually don't mind zooming in real close sometimes. Now you'll notice you can actually drag audio around, but it's jumping to the grid that I have it set here at a quarter note. Right here, if you right click there, here's our grid spacing. So it's really flexible. You can divide this up perfectly. And if you want to deactivate the grid, see how it's highlighted here and here? Just toggle it on, off and on. I know that it's, I almost wish it was a little bit more brighter than that myself, but that's because I love this program and I work with it all the time. So for me, it's very simple, but for you at home, now you know that if you want to free yourself from the grid, just toggle that off. Now you can drag the audio anywhere you want. So for example, let me bring it right on beat 1, bar 9, right about there. All right, let me zoom out again. And now I can lock it to the grid again. So let's see if our tempo lines up. 2, 3, 4. There you go. So what did we do here? We're editing the audio. We're actually preparing the audio, as I said earlier when we first got started with this video. Because, you know, as I mentioned before, you might be struggling with Melodyne. Maybe it's hard for you to get your head around it. So little tips and tricks and things like this to be aware of in advance, and then how to make Melodyne work for you. As simple as this, understanding the timing nature of Melodyne, I think is equally as important as anything else, because you gotta really have everything set up for you so that way your work is a lot easier. And, well, music is timing. We can leave this as a free feel for performance, but I wanted to start on beat 1, bar 19, and it was as easy as that. Now, what can we do with this? Well, we could do lots with this, actually. Let's say I've got this really great bass groove, and I want to audition some drum loops with it. Well, I happen to have a folder here in my taskbar. Check this out. You can open the info pane here at any time, and you can also do it here on the left side. So there's two places to access this right here. And if you don't see this sidebar up in the top left, you can activate it there. So you can actually turn any one of these windows on and off to work with your workflow viewing environment there. Now you can drag from whatever operating system you're using a folder into this area where it says files, and Melodyne will remember that. Here from the drop down, you can choose some more. So I can load as many folders here as I want. And I think that's really, really cool. So you can drag a folder here with vocals, drag a folder here with guitars, drag a folder here with drums, and all you need to do is open that folder and there's all of your files there. File management, workflow, really great tip. If you're not doing that, there's no excuse not to now, because from within this, we can now audition some audio. All right, let's say I want to bring in a drum loop. Let's test some out. Let's find a good one. That's not bad. How about this one? Delight, I like it. For some of you 90s kids like myself, I think you'll get where they're going with this one. Very cool. Grooves in the Melodyne. All right, check this out. Now, back up in our tempo section right here, you've got this button. It goes from gray to light gray. All right, now what that is that's automatic stretching. What does that mean? Well, this you have to be really careful of. If you have this activated, anytime you import audio, it's going to time stretch it to the parameters that you have set here on your grid at any time. So you may bring in audio and be like, why is it always changing? What's going on? I don't want that. Well, perhaps this button is activated. So when it's deactivated, whenever you bring in any audio, it won't change the tempo at all. It'll stay at the tempo that it's originally sourcing from the original wave file. All right, there's another tip for you. So I'm going to activate that. Now, anytime I bring in a waveform here, it's going to tempo map it to my grid. And the grid, the tempo map is based off of this bass guitar performance. Check this out. I'm just going to drag it and bring it to beat 1 bar 9. And as I let it go, it's going to not only import it, but auto stretch it. As fast as that. Let's take a listen. We shut the metronome off. Here we go. Not bad. You notice that I'm adjusting some parameters here. Here you got a volume fader, obviously mute and solo, and a record button. Yes, you can record into Melodyne. Try it sometime. Really cool. I often record a lot of my acoustic guitar into Melodyne when I want to do some editing with the guitar. I can remove some low-end rumble here with the built-in new spectral shaping parameters, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. If you want to see that, leave your comment below and we'll check that out. Now back to this. Okay, that worked pretty well. Let me mute that and let's bring in something. All right, this is totally different. Let's see how this works. Bring it in, beat 1 bar 9, let it go. And as quickly as that, it's auto stretched it. This time I will turn the metronome on. Oh, that's working really well, right? So what is tempo mapping? It's taking the identified transient hits in that drum sample and it's auto stretching them to the unique timing of the bass guitar here. All right. Because remember, it's free feel. We didn't lock it to the grid, which we could do. We're keeping it free feel to highlight the power of working with tempo and auto stretching and how amazing it is and how it can help you be more creative if you come across something like this. Let's hear that one again because I really liked it. So if you're at home and you're working on a project, you need some beats and you get some audio, well, look what you can do now, huh? Really impress your friends and stay creative. That's the best part about it. Let's try another one. Clean and steady. Oh, all right, fine. Let's bring that in. Beat 1 bar 9. Let me mute the other ones. Here we go. These are good examples because they're 3 very different sounding drum loops. And they're all working because the tempo power here in Melodyne is amazing. It's really amazing. Let's do, you know what? I'm going to do a combination. Check this out. I'll do a combination of folk rock and clean and steady here. Let's see what happens. Let me blend them in. There's just clean and steady, and there's folk rock. So I'm actually taking two different drum loops that are now tempo mapped to an organic bass guitar performance, and I'm blending those drum loops together. Do you see that? We're doing one called folk rock and clean and steady right there. And it's working. It's really working. And of course, I've got my metronome active there. All right. So I think these tips are super important because, like I said before, I come across a lot of individuals who are often struggling with getting their head around Melodyne. And the important part is that whatever audio project you're working on, it's going to be unique every time. So you have to prepare Melodyne. You have to prepare Melodyne in advance to work for you based on what you're working with. And once you get that lined up, then you can stay in that creative headspace more often and get the most out of Melodyne, make it serve you and your end results, okay? So this is a little bit about some of the tempo features in the standalone version. And a lot of this is obviously, a lot of these features and settings are available in the plugin version. Let's take a look at that next, actually. I've opened up a session here. This is from my band, and I've got the same bass guitar right here. Let's take a listen. We've got it right here in track 4. Okay. So we talked about audio random access. Now this is groundbreaking. If you want to be a Melodyne user, you're going to have to learn how to use audio random access. And lucky for you, it's never been easier. Because traditionally, before audio random access, one would have to insert Melodyne on a track, analyze the audio in real time before they could edit it. Now it all happens as fast as your computer allows. Check this out. I'm going to select the bass guitar and come up to audio. Now your DAW will be a little bit different. I'm using Studio One Pro here because they were the first to implement audio random access, and they helped develop this PreSonus together with Celemony, I believe. So they're kind of like the creators of this, which is now also going to be available in Pro Tools really, really soon. Thank you, Avid. All right, and let's choose Edit with Melodyne. Now, as easy as that, here's our bass guitar. It's now been analyzed and detected, okay? So what does that mean? It means, wait, where's my audio? I don't see it. But Carlo, you said it's been analyzed and detected. Well, here's another tip and trick for you. Because a bass guitar is in a lower range, it's probably south of the viewing window where you're looking at. You might be looking at middle C, and the fundamental, the frequencies are at a lower range, somewhere down here. So don't panic. A quick way to find out where your audio is, here's a great tip, is when you take these sliders, see this navigation sliders here, there's one, here's a vertical one here on the left side. If you double click it, right in the middle, right about there, pops it in the center that way. And if you take the horizontal slider and double click it, it puts all of the audio that's been detected into the editing window for you to see. Those two little tricks. Double click the vertical and horizontal sliders in Melodyne, and it'll compartmentalize the audio for you to see. Now, what are we looking at here? There's a lot of audio. That's the whole bass track. If you don't want to edit an entire track, you can just choose a selection in your DAW. Select a range of audio, just maybe a couple bars of measures, and then choose Edit with Melodyne, and you'll see just that. So you can spot edit audio with Melodyne. But in this case, we did the whole track because I wanted to show you that tip about how to see your audio quickly with the double clicking the sliders trick. Now, if I right click, I'm going to choose my zoom and come in here. So we talked about tempo before, but what about pitch and such? Here's a really important thing, and I can't stress this enough, is that amazing as Melodyne is, you still need to be in control. Melodyne's great, but you're the engineer, you're the artist, you're the producer, and there's some things, again, that you need to verify. For example, it's telling me it's in the key of A major here. All right, so we know that A major, you know, we got a G sharp. Okay, so we're going to go F sharp. We're going to say, okay, so it's all okay. But, you know, you have to verify that. I always want to verify what key it's in. And I often like to choose a melodic instrument, which means it's just going to play one note at a time, mostly like a bass guitar, to analyze. If you analyze a vocalist first, here's a great tip for you. Now, a singer may have a lot of unique inflections in their voice and performance value. So, blending notes and singing, getting that emotion out may misidentify the key. So I like to start with the more melodic instrument first when I want to know what the key is. And one way to do that is to bring in a melodic instrument like a bass guitar. And by melodic, I mean under algorithm, you can see that it's set to melodic. Now the algorithms are going to allow you to tell Melodyne, what am I working with? If it's a polyphonic, complicated sound like guitar chords or piano chords, then you want polyphonic. Melodic would be a vocalist, because a singer, one person can't sing two notes at the same time traditionally. And so that would be melodic. And then, of course, there's percussive and universal for anything else that you're not sure of. Just choose universal. Okay? So definitely identified it as melodic, and that's important. But is it in the key of A major? Let's find out. So I'm going to move on to the verse side. All right. Now, another thing I want to point out is that we've got some new features here. Check this out. Right here in the top right, see what I'm doing? I'm toggling on show key. When I open that up, it's telling me also it's in the key of A major. We also have a lane for chords. Now, if you're playing chords, Melodyne will also show you the chords at the different measures. Really cool. So if you don't see that, again, you can toggle it on and off here. Hopefully my head's not in the way. Nope. And the key. All right, there we go. Now, graphically, what you're looking at, let me see if I can do this in the plugin preferences. Let me go to preferences. Okay, this is good. Let's see if I could, miscellaneous. Well, maybe in the standalone. I know in the standalone, you can actually change the contrast to make the colors of Melodyne a little bit more visual. That's something you can definitely do. Let me open up the standalone version and show what I mean. Here under preferences. All right, check this out. We'll go to user interface. Look, right now it's on default. Let me go to dimmed. Okay, ooh, it's a little bit darker. Might be easier to see, right? The contrast is different. There's also a high contrast 1 and a high contrast 2. Now, I think it's important to be aware of these settings, because sometimes the beat lines here in the edit window can be hard to see depending on the brightness of your monitor. Let me go back to default. See how everything comes a little bit more washed out there? So I often like to work on a setting like this, dimmed, which I think is really kind of a nice balance of, okay, I can still see my beat lines. So there's a little tip for you as well. So keep in mind that you can change the contrast. But what we're looking at here are lanes of pitches, obviously relative to the key of A major. But to circle back, is that the right key? You need to know this stuff before you go on, because if you're not in the right key and you start moving notes around, you're just going to make things sound worse. Okay, now, for example, if I come to my pitch tool, you'll see that the D sharp is grayed out. I cannot put a note there. I cannot put a note there. To avoid accidentals, that's good. But are we in the right key? Now, to toggle that grid on and off, you can just turn the G clef on and off like this. And by right-clicking, you've got settings here. For example, I want to view my workspace relative to key. I'm going to switch to pitch lines. Now, these lines are like arrows that will pierce the center of the pitches. Okay, and this is another tip for you. This is why pitch lines is a great way to help you verify or put Melodyne, I should say, in the right key. It's not like Melodyne's making a mistake. It's working with what it's got. And it still does an amazing job, but you need to verify it. You got to put this work in before you continue. Check out down here. This is a great example. I've got two notes here that are in G, but that's not relative to A major. What's going on here? So that obviously something's wrong. See that? The pitch lines are not going through that, but I've got notes here that's probably pretty consistent. Look, there's more G's, more G's, more G's. Oh, geez. So how do we fix that? Well, this information is now designed to help you. That's why I think using pitch lines, how they can pierce here from the center of D, you can see if I select, let's zoom in again. If I select this note right here, it's telling me that it's a D and it's -7 cents flat. Great. And now we've got these mystery G notes. So what we're going to do now is correctly put Melodyne in the right key. And to do that, I'm going to right click here where it says A major. And let's see, under Notes Reflect Scale and Changes, it's set to off, which means if I change any value in my scale section, the bar, the notes won't follow along. But if I turn it on, tuning and mode right here, under Notes Reflect Scale Changes, tuning and mode, if I was to now put this in a different key, the notes will follow. Check it out. If I'm going to go to D major, there you go, perfectly. Now those same G's now have a line going perfectly through them. Check it out. Let's go back to A major. See that? And D major. I don't want the notes to move. Okay, so what it did now is I saw that the G notes didn't have a pitch line going through them. So it was telling me that A major wasn't the correct key. It was D major now. Now, if everything looks, because Melodyne is a bit of a visual program, sure, it's eyes and ears these days, you know? And these visual tools are designed to help you. Now everything looks great. Every one of these notes is getting an accurate pitch line running through it. So what did we do? We put in a little bit of effort. And my point here is that, hey guys, thanks for being in the chat room. You guys rock. Oh, another note is about maybe a 14-second delay between the chat room and what I see. So if you do type something in, I'm keeping an eye on that. If you have a question, it might take me a couple of seconds to get to you. But thanks everyone in the chat room. You guys are amazing. Now back to making Melodyne work for you. What better way should it work, right? We now correctly put this in the right key by using one of my favorite tricks, the pitch lines. Let's go back to key. Okay, hey, this is good. You can see that the gray, the light gray areas are notes that are not relative to D major. And while I have key snap on, I cannot, again, make an accidental. I can't put this in D sharp. If it was off, if I shut this off, then you could put the note anywhere you want. Okay? And you could turn that on by activating the G clef. Now, again, I mentioned before that a lot of the details in interfacing with Melodyne, I don't want to say are somewhat hidden, but you just need to know where they are. You might say to yourself, oh, it's just a G clef. And it's more than just a G clef. This is a button. And you can tell because it's glowing, has a slight halo around there, okay? And if you right click, you get access to more parameters within it. So I'm going to switch back to pitch lines. And pitch lines, again, is my favorite way of verifying the key. If someone doesn't tell you the key, of course, if you know the key, then you can just put it in there. So these visual aids can help you sonically in the long run, no questions asked. All right, let's take a listen to this. Great. Now, because the version we're using, Melodyne Studio, is a multi-track version, okay? Melodyne Assistant, I think, will do audio to Midi. There's Melodyne Essential, which is included with Studio One Pro. When you invest in Studio One Pro, it actually comes with Melodyne Essential to get you started, which is great for timing and pitch. And those versions can always be upgraded. I am using Studio, which means I now have access to the spectral editing, the waveform editing here with the harmonics, overtones, and the EQ. So I can do some EQ editing. What I call, because I've been using Melodyne for a while, so I have my own terminology, I call it source audio editing. When you're editing with Melodyne like this, it's almost a pure form of
digging into the waveform. And when you're finished, you kind of have a version of what you feel it should have sounded like when it was being recorded. That way, my compressors and EQs are more creative and less corrective in the long run. All right. Now, let's go back to what I was saying here. Now you have a multi-track version. I'm going to... Oh, another thing in Studio One here. Look at this. I could detach the window. So if you have multiple monitors, you could use Melodyne in a multiple monitor view like this. Okay. And really great workflow right there. You could just put this in its own monitor, have Melodyne always on standby waiting for you like that. All right, let me put it back. We can dock it here within the program too. Now, if I was to take another file, let's say our vocals, let's say we want to bring that into the Melodyne universe, I could do the same thing again. Just select the vocals right here, come up to audio and choose edit with Melodyne. Now it's going to populate it here. You see lead vocal and bass guitar. Here is now my lead vocals. And I can even, by holding control, I can bring in the bass guitar here in conjunction. So we can see, here's my vocals in this range, and my bass is in this frequency range down here. Okay, all right. I have it muted here in the track. Let me unmute the vocals. All right, there we go. And you will hear the vocals and bass.
Well, I still think and I still drink and I still cry. I guess that's the way that I live. Guess that's the way that I live.
And it is rock and roll after all. Having this multi-cumulative view where audio, multiple tracks can live in the same workspace has changed audio production for a lot of people. Now, Melodyne introduced this years ago, and it really has changed a lot because now you can see, for example, vocals, multiple vocals, instead of on independent tracks, how they relate to each other frequency-wise and even timing-wise in one editable window like this. And you can see that and you can edit them each separately still. Now, if I wanted to just work on vocals, I could just say, hey, bring in the vocals, and here we go. And we could do the same thing. You see that we're still in the key of D major because that's where we told Melodyne to be. And that's great. Now, if I wanted to start editing this, of course, I could grab my pitch tool or my timing tool. Another cool advantage here, let me zoom in, is an advancement that I really love that's a Sibilance tool. Whenever you see the stripes in the audio here, that could be anything that's non-musical. Could be a certain type of mouth noise or sibilance. Here underneath the amplitude tool, we have the Sibilance tool. I could take sibilance now, let's say this was some sibilance, and look at that. I could reduce the sibilance if I wanted. But here's the real key, is I like to work in real time. So I will select a loop marker here, and while the audio is playing back in real time, then I like manipulating the sound because there's no pops or clicks or fades necessary. It's just going to give you clean, pure audio every time. All of that post-editing junk is handled in the background for you. So I think that's really cool. So I just set a cycle range here, and let's see what happens.
Well, I still think and I still drink and I still cry. Well, I still think and I still drink and I still cry.
So let me grab my Sibilance tool.
Well, I still think and I still drink and I still cry.
And I'm going to lower the sibilance
well,
there.
I still think and I still drink and I still
by double clicking it, it'll lower it all the way.
I still think and I still drink and I still cry.
Not too sibilant to begin with, but you can see how easy you can just spot fix audio. I just changed the sibilance here, here, and here. While the audio is playing back, no crossfading, no pops, no clicks, nothing, just pure clean editing.
Well, I still think and I still drink and I still cry.
And again, it's completely undoable. I know in the standalone version here, we have, oh man, how many levels of undo do we have? I think it's, where is it? User interface. We have something like, here we go, maximum levels of undo up to 100. If you don't get it right by then, just send it to me. Happy to help. Okay, so the Sibilance tool is another tool that you should be utilizing. Again, because you're going to source edit the audio. A lot of time when you start applying heavy compression, obviously, the non-musical parts, those components, are going to be affected too, because those are waveforms, those are a sound. But when you edit things like Sibilance in advance, yeah, you might say, Carlo, there's de-essers for that. Okay, but those are filters. And some of them are dynamic and they're really great, and I've used them all. I have them all. I love it. We live in a good age. But that is a filter. And oftentimes people feel that it's affecting the tone of the whole track. I get that. But source editing audio like this, while you're doing pitch and tempo, why not do a little Sibilance editing too? So your de-essers don't have to work as hard, or you don't even need them at all anymore. And that's the best way. So you can just compress creatively and EQ creatively. All right. There. Now let's talk again. I wanted to talk about some of the fundamentals that make Melodyne work for you. How much time we got left? We got a little bit left. Let's have a little bit of fun with some audio to MIDI. What do you say? Let me close this session and let's go to some audio to MIDI. Let's play some drums here. I know it's a little quiet. Let me turn up a little bit. There. These are live drums, okay? I'm doing this all here in Studio One, and we're going to be using Melodyne with audio random access. Check this out. I think the snare drum was a little bit weak here. Here's the snare drum. Let's take a listen to the snare drum. So what do we hear in there? I hear hi-hat, I hear cymbal, I hear a little bit of the whole kit in general. Here's one of the biggest secrets, and I've been teaching this for years, and I thought it's important enough to include it here because I'm going to show you how fast and easy we can do this now. What I want to do now is gate out all the junk. Let's go to our mixer. Now I can insert, let's put a gate. Let me go, I'll do my favorite gate here included with Studio One here. Now I actually, under my presets, I created one called a hard snare gate. This is exactly what I labeled it. A hard snare gate. See, as I adjust the threshold, you'll hear more of the instruments coming in. So play with the threshold until you're just getting the strongest sounding transients, okay? Now, this is going to be different in all DAWs, but check this out. If I right click on that track with that gate plugin, I'm going to choose transform rendered audio. It's going to actually now print the gate effect on that track for me. Check this out. And there you go. Now I just have these strong hits. But what does that mean? Now, when I convert this to MIDI data, I'm not going to have extra junk. I'm just going to have the MIDI hits relative to the snares. That's why we gated everything out. Because believe it or not, if you have a little splash or a cymbal, that's going to get a MIDI note. It's going to mess up your work. Again, this is about making Melodyne work for you. All right. So hopefully you can picture that in your mind. Now let's add an instrument track underneath it. Here we go. And we're going to resample this in real time. I'll call this AD. Let's call it AD snare because I'm going to use addictive drums. Check this out. Let's open up my browser, instrument browser. I'm going to bring addictive drums on there. Now what we're doing is loading a virtual instrument onto a instrument track, but there's nothing on there. What I want to do is select the snare now, and again, come up to audio and choose edit with Melodyne. And you'll see that the Melodyne's algorithm correctly identifies it as percussive. All we have is nice, clean snare hits. Now you could go in here and, believe it or not, edit these hits further with Melodyne if you wanted. You could take the amplitude tool, You could take a note, you could mute it if you wanted by double clicking it. You could make it louder or softer. And the reason why I recommend doing this is because when you convert this to MIDI, what's called the velocity, the strength, energy, the volume of that is also going to be converted too. So if you have a quiet hit, it'll be quieter after the audio to MIDI conversion. So that is another tip for you. I can make these all a little bit louder if I wanted right there. Okay, now if I select that track, the snare drum with Melodyne on it that we just edited, drag it onto my instrument track, here we have a string of the MIDI notes. Now all we have to do, see that? Right now it's triggering a tom hit. This one right here. Well, we want to trigger, and we could change snares. I like this one right here. So I want to trigger that snare. Now, right now in the MIDI editor here in Studio One, it'll be different in yours. We have it in drum editor mode. If you want to work in keyboard mode, just switch back like this. Now I want to select all the notes, and I want to bring this down to where I know the snare drums are. There we go. So now those MIDI notes are now going to trigger the snare drum and addicted drums, all because we did audio to MIDI conversion here. Let's listen to it. Just the snare hits. These live snare drum hits are now being re-represented with a better snare. Let's hear the original snare. That's the original one, gated, heavily gated. Let's bring the new one in again. And of course, whatever virtual instrument you're using to replace your drums may be different, but here you can also adjust effects, reverb, even delays and such, and you have an additional mix layer and gain staging here in Addicted Drums. Thank you, Addicted Drums. I love Addicted Drums. All right, let's bring in the whole drum. And I'm going to mute the old snare because we don't need it. And let's see where we're at. Here's the original. Here's what we were working with, kinda. Ready? Okay, not bad. Gives us something to work with though, right? I did gate the snare though, remember that. Now here's where we are now. Oh yeah. And all of this is happening thanks to Melodyne's audio to MIDI conversion. So the big tip again that I'm always preaching about is preparing your audio. This whole live stream is about how to make Melodyne work for you in advance. Because unless you do a little bit of preparation first, you're going to make work way more difficult for you in the long run. So making Melodyne work for you, for me, means doing the preparation. Once you identify things like the tempo, the downbeat of a song, and the correct key, those two important elements that we covered in this live stream, and preparing audio for audio to MIDI conversion, we gated out the junk. It's just a really quick kind of a quick and dirty trick that I use to bring out, just the transient hits and let the virtual instrument do all the heavy lifting. So Melodyne does you do the preparation, Melodyne does the conversion, and then whatever virtual instrument you're using to trigger any sound, any kind of rhythmic sound. In this case, we chose a snare drum. We could do barking dogs or cats or anything at all. Well, we wanted to convert this snare drum because once it's MIDI, you can do anything with it. So it's all about the preparation in advance. You can see we got nice clean hits, but we also use Melodyne not only to do the conversion, but you can see I grabbed the amplitude tool and I changed the level of some of those. Now, if you wanted to change them again, very easily, you could delete the MIDI, do further editing, and then simply drag and drop it back down on the instrument track again. So it's very easy. It's a solid, cool workflow trick. And if you haven't tried it, I hope you do, and leave your creative comments below, because I'd love to hear how it's working for you. So I know we covered quite a bit here, and believe it or not, we've only really scratched the surface. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of some of these small little nuances, these buttons, these applications that are part, integral to this, but more importantly, integral to you getting the most out of it here in Melodyne version 5, and we've been using Studio. So the best way I always say is to find out for yourself. Thank you everyone for joining me in the live chat. You guys are just awesome. Didn't get a lot of questions, which means you're just listening. That's cool too. If you do have any questions in the future, just please leave them in the comments below, because we have music marketing and everyone at Celemony and the makers of Melodyne and myself, we really do love what we do. And we want to connect with you. We want to be there for you as an audio production family. So, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get access to more videos and more upcoming live streams like this. I hope you join me in the future. My name's Carlo Libertini, everyone. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. And just remember, always stay busy and stay creative. Thanks.